The average age of entry into prostitution is 14 years old. Then that means there's many young women who are just like me, who were recruited into it as young as 12 years old, some of them 11 years old, into what is not just prostitution, what is a nightmare, really, what is kidnapping and torturing of a young child. How do we respond when this child grows up, when they're needy and they're unable to function in society? My story is pretty typical, and I was surprised to find that out. And I didn't find that out until I was close to 30 years old. I didn't understand that other 12-year-olds, other young girls who had run away and been homeless on the streets were also sexually exploited. I really didn't understand how common it was until young victims started coming to me for help. And that's why I do what I do. What happened to me originally was, actually it was a friend's uncle. I was 12 years old, I was homeless, living on the streets, and I was a runaway. I knew that he had already molested my friend, and I knew I was afraid of him, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. And one evening he invited me to a motel room with him, and he told me that if I did things for him, then he would take care of me. And sadly, even at 12 years old, because I lived on the streets, I knew what that meant. And that first evening I escaped, and when I did, I was on this street called Parkway Drive, known as Motel Drive. And it's a place in Fresno where everybody knew you could get a prostitute. I didn't have any idea where I was. So when I walked onto the street and I saw an older woman that was beat up, I approached her to try to help her. She was also 6 months pregnant, and I invited her to go into the room that had been rented for me to try to help her. And she subsequently recruited me into prostitution by inviting her boyfriend to the room. He began immediately to manipulate me. He told me that he would take care of me. He told me he would take me away from my friend's uncle and protect me from him, and that he would give me whatever I wanted, whatever I needed. I wouldn't have to worry about where I was going to sleep or what I was going to eat, and that he would buy me clothes. And he asked me, in return for him protecting me, if I would do things for him, and that was to go out on the streets and to sleep with men and give him the money. He started out really nice. He started out, I remember vividly walking down the street with him and him putting his arm around me like he was my buddy. Then days after that, he was raping me violently. He was choking me with a belt and forcing me to do things that I didn't want to do. And it was very painful, very painful. And I cried out for my mom, who, wasn't there, and she didn't know what was happening to me. And he took me to a home where he traded me for crack cocaine, and they forced me to go into a bathroom, these drug dealers, and they came into the bathroom with guns, and they pointed the guns at me and raped me. Again, I was 12 years old. I was wearing cartoon underwear. I was a baby. The next thing that happened to me was that I was arrested and thrown into juvenile hall for 30 days. And then I just went further into crime. Eventually, I had enough crimes and enough time over my head that my probation officer recommended that I get 6 months. And when I was doing that time, when I was serving that sentence, I met the man that would change my life for the good. He got to know me. He was the first person to ask me what happened to me on the streets, to really find out about the torture, about the kidnapping, and to start to get me help. He made sure I was in a group counseling with other young girls who had similar experiences. I was able to get one-on-one counseling and parental counseling with my mother, talked to the probation officer, he talked to my teachers. He became a surrogate parent for me, and he made sure that I had the resources I needed to heal. And I don't think enough people do that, really take a personal interest in helping a young person. He gave me the idea that I could do something. He told me I had potential, and he was the first person to ever tell me that. And when I went back to school finally, when I was 15 in the 10th grade, I went back with confidence. if you really look at what's happening, the sexual exploitation of a child, that is kidnapping and torture. It's very clear. And to me that says, you know what? Your house is on fire. You need to put out that fire. It's an emergency. Kidnapping and torture of a child is an emergency. We need to respond. It's an emergency. I'm just dumbfounded when I think about this happening to other young women and we're not doing anything about it. We're talking about young women who are part of our community, who will continue to be part of our community, being tortured, kidnapped, raped, and ignoring it. So this is a huge, huge injury to our community. And all of these young women have the potential to be doctors, lawyers, businesswomen, executives, entrepreneurs. They all can contribute. And if they're not assisted through this period of their life when this tragedy has happened, then they're left to suffer on their own. And they really become an open wound in our society that we have to manage then for the rest of their lives and maybe for their children's lives and generations to come.